Section 11 of Great Pirate Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Timothy Ferguson. Great Pirate Stories, by Various, edited by Joseph Louis French. Section 11, A True Account of Three Notorious Pirates, Howard Pyle, Editor. Captain Bartholomew Roberts and his crew. Bartholomew Roberts sailed in an honest employ from London, aboard of the Princess, Captain Plum, commander, of which ship he was second mate. He left England November 1719, and arrived at Guinea about February following, and being at Anamabo, taking in slaves for the West Indies, was taken in the said ship by Captain Howell Davis. In the beginning he was very averse to this sort of life, and would certainly have escaped from them had a fair opportunity presented itself. Yet afterwards he changed his principles, as many besides him have done upon another element, and perhaps for the same reason too, viz. Preferment. And what he did not like as a private man, he could reconcile to his conscience as a commander. Davis having been killed in the Island of Princes, whilst planning to capture it with all its inhabitants, the company found themselves under the necessity of filling up his post, for which there appeared 2 or 3 candidates among the select part of them that were distinguished by the title of Lords. Such were Simpson, Ashplant, Anstis, and such. And on canvassing this matter, how shattered and weak a condition their government must be without a head, since Davis had been removed in the manner before mentioned, my Lord Dennis proposed, it is said over a bowl, to this purpose: that it was not of any great signification who was dignified with title, for really and in good truth all good governments had, like theirs, the supreme power lodged with the community, who might doubtless depute and revoke as suited interest or humour. We are the original of this claim, says he, and should a captain be so saucy as to exceed prescription at any time, why, down with him. It will be a caution after he is dead to his successors of what fatal consequence any sort of assuming may be. However, it is my advice that while we are sober, we pitch upon a man of courage and skilled in navigation, one who by his counsel and bravery seems best able to defend this commonwealth, and ward us from the dangers and tempests of an unstable element, and the fatal consequences of anarchy. And such a one I take Roberts to be, a fellow, I think, in all respects worthy of your esteem and favour. This speech was loudly applauded by all but Lord Simpson, who had secret expectations himself, but on this disappointment grew sullen, and left them swearing he did not care who they chose captain, so it was not a papist, for against them he had conceived an irreconcilable hatred, for that his father had been a sufferer in Monmouth's rebellion. Roberts was accordingly elected, though he had not been above 6 weeks among them. His choice was confirmed by both the lords and commoners, and he accepted of the honour, saying that since he had dipped his hands in muddy water and must be a pirate, it was better being a commander than a common man. As soon as the government was settled, by promoting other officers in the room of those that were killed by the Portuguese, the company resolved to avenge Captain Davis's death, he being more than ordinarily respected by the crew for his affability and good nature, as well as his conduct and bravery upon all occasions, and, pursuant to this resolution, about 30 men were landed in order to make an attack upon the fort, which must be ascended to by a steep hill against the mouth of the cannon. These men were headed by one Kennedy, a bold, daring fellow, but very wicked and profligate. They marched directly up under the fire of their ship guns, and as soon as they were discovered, the Portuguese quitted their post and fled to the town, and the pirates marched in without opposition, set fire to the fort, and threw all the guns off the hill into the sea. But this was not looked upon as a sufficient satisfaction for the injury they received, therefore most of the company were for burning the town, which Roberts said he would yield to if any means could be proposed of doing it without their own destruction, for the town had a securer situation than the fort, a thick wood coming almost close to it, affording cover to the defendants, who, under such an advantage, he told them, it was to be feared, would fire and stand better to their arms; beside, that bare houses would be but a slender reward for their trouble and loss. This prudent advice prevailed. However, they mounted the French ship they seized at this place with 12 guns, and lightened her, in order to come up to the town, the water being shoal, and batter down several houses; after which they returned on board, gave back the French ship to those that had the most right to her, and sailed out of the harbour by the light of 2 Portuguese ships, which they were pleased to set on fire there. Roberts stood away to the southward, and met with a Dutch Guineaman, which he made prize of, but, after having plundered her, the skipper had his ship again. 2 days after he took an English ship, called the Experiment, Captain Cornet, at Cape Lopez. The men went all into the pirate service, and having no occasion for the ship, they burned her, and then steered for St. Thomé, but meeting with nothing in their way, they sailed for Annabona, and there watered, took in provisions, and put it to a vote of the company, whether their next voyage should be to the East Indies or to Brazil. The latter being resolved on, they sailed accordingly, and in 28 days arrived at Ferdinando, an uninhabited island on that coast. Here they watered, boot-topped their ship, and made ready for the designed cruise. Upon this coast our rovers cruised for about 9 weeks, keeping generally out of sight of land, but without seeing a sail, which discouraged them so that they determined to leave the station and steer for the West Indies, and in order thereto stood in to make the land for the taking of their departure, and thereby they fell in unexpectedly with a fleet of 42 sail of Portuguese ships off the Bay of Los Todos Santos, with all their lading in, for Lisbon, several of them of good force, who lay to waiting for 2 men-of-war of 70 guns each, their convoy. However, Roberts thought it should go hard with him, but he would make up his market among them, and thereupon mixed with the fleet, and kept his men hid till proper resolutions could be formed. That done, they came close up to one of the deepest, and ordered her to send the master on board quietly, threatening to give them no quarter if any resistance or signal of distress was made. The Portuguese, being surprised at these threats, and the sudden flourish of cutlasses from the pirates, submitted without a word, and the captain came on board. Roberts saluted him in a friendly manner, telling him that they were gentlemen of fortune, but that their business with him was only to be informed which was the richest ship in the fleet, and if he directed them right, he should be restored to his ship without molestation; otherwise he must expect immediate death. Whereupon this Portuguese master pointed to one of the 40 guns and 150 men, a ship of greater force than the Rover, but this in no ways dismayed them. They were Portuguese, they said, and so immediately steered away from him. When they came within hail, the master whom they had prisoner was ordered to ask how Señor Captain did, and to invite him on board, for that he had a matter of consequence to impart to him, which being done, he returned for answer that he would wait upon him presently, but by the bustle that immediately followed, the pirates perceived that they were discovered, and that this was only a deceitful answer to gain time to put their ship in a posture of defence. So without delay they poured in a broadside, boarded, and grappled her. The dispute was short and warm, wherein many of the Portuguese fell, and 2 only of the pirates. By this time the fleet was alarmed, signals of topgallant sheets flying, and guns fired to give notice to the men-of-war, who rid still at an anchor, and made but scurvy haste out to their assistance. And if what the pirates themselves related to be true, the commanders of these ships were blamable to the highest degree, and unworthy of the title, or so much as the name, of men. For Roberts, finding the prize to sail heavy, and yet resolving not to lose her, lay by for the headmost of them, which much outsailed the other, and prepared for battle, which was ignominiously declined, though of such superior force, for, not daring to venture on the pirate alone, he tarried so long for his consort as gave them both time leisurely